The Idaho statesman was calling me bigoted and all these things on more of an opinion piece. And I got an overwhelming amount of support, behind
Yeah.
it and said, we're so thankful you're standing up for what's right and true.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the LYFE Podcast. Today, I've got a totally special guest. I'm so excited to sit down and talk to you. I've been thinking about this all week. Mark Fitzpatrick. And I'm going to get started by reading a little bio. Mark Fitzpatrick is an entrepreneur, real estate broker, and community leader based in Eagle. He's the owner of Old State Saloon, a gathering place that reflects his commitment to local business and community culture. A licensed Idaho real estate broker. In addition, he is the founder of Heterosexual Awesomeness Incorporated, an organization centered on unwavering dedication to traditional family values. Before entering the business world, Mark served as a police officer, bringing a background of public service and leadership to his entrepreneurial ventures. Known as a marketer, cultural commentator, and outspoken advocate for his values. He is currently running for the Governor of Idaho 2026. Come on.
Yes, sir.
Considers his most important roles to be that of a husband of 23 years.
Yes.
Come on. Father of 6 children. I have 5, so I don't meet many people that have more than me.
They're the best.
Most importantly, a devoted Christ follower.
Amen.
Man, it is honestly a pleasure. And I know you're so busy up here, because you're only up here for a short week, right?
Right.
So
We'll be back.
Yeah.
And we're going to do an event next time and give people plenty of notice ahead of time. And so we'll get to meet, hopefully, anybody who wants to come out and say hello.
That's super cool. Well, the crazy thing is I'd set a t-shirt aside for you. When you got here, you said, I got a t-shirt for you. So, man, I've got a t-shirt that I'll kind of show it up here for everyone to see. But it's from a guy that I just have an incredible admiration for. His courage is not just speaking truth. It's refusing to bend when they try to silence you, Charlie Kirk.
Absolutely.
And man, I want you to have
Thank you.
that t-shirt. It's my daughter and I are starting this t-shirt company and we're figuring it out.
Similar message here with our campaign shirt. There we go. Right there, right big. Not for sale, we the people, right?
Come on.
And so here you go.
Thank you so much. I literally will have this on tomorrow. Oh, this is awesome. Thanks a lot. Well,
it's the same message, Charlie Kirk, he wasn't for sale, right? He's basically like, hey, look, I'm going to speak truth. I'm going to speak it boldly. And, when you speak truth in a world like that we're in, that has so much evil and is pervasive, you're going to leave a wake behind you with damage. That truth leaves damage behind you if you're in a world that has deception. I think we just need more and more people to step forward and say, I don't care. I don't care about the damage that we're going to cause. We're going to speak truth. Let the damage happen. Let's build back up under a foundation of truth rather than keep going with this deception and nonsense and evil that's going on, right?
Go on, man. That's awesome. Those are good words. Well, in this podcast, I really, people know you as, the owner of Old State Saloon and, from media and that kind of stuff. But sometimes people don't get a chance to meet you or hear your story. And that's kind of what this podcast is all about. So would you mind just starting off with, tell me about growing up, brothers, sisters, mom, what?
Grew up in an awesome family. And there's the whole white privilege thing that people talk about in the last couple decades. I don't think that it's necessarily white or black or a race of any kind. I do feel privileged that I grew up in a family with a father who loved my mother. So,
come on.
And that is,
so
and they love the Lord. And I grew up watching that happen. And that is such a privilege that put me in a position in life just to do well. I knew that I was brought up in a family where we had love and conversation and prayer as a daily part of everything. I have one sister. She's older than I am. She lives in North Carolina, a wonderful woman. She has a wonderful family of her own with her husband. And so we were able to kind of continue that generational, just having happy, healthy marriages and families. And I'm madly in love with my beautiful wife of 23 years, Sarah. And she's a little bit hesitant at first about this whole, she is now fully behind. And I didn't announce until she was. Yeah, she said, you know what? I've been praying about this and I'm fully behind this and my kids are fully behind it. And, some of the stuff we'll get into, I think was what prepared me for that whole thing with as far as the last 2 years of time. And so we'll get into that in a little bit. But I grew up family of four. So my sister and I, and my parents, and we grew up in North Los Angeles County area, San Fernando Valley. And I was the son of a police officer. My dad is a Los Angeles police and Simi Valley police, a 40-year police officer. And it was awesome growing up with your dad being a cop and watching him come home and tell stories about things that he did and the difference that he made in people's lives. It was something that I just, as a kid, he was a hero to me, hearing about those stories and things. So when I first went to college, I did very well through school. And that's part of that privilege of having that family that's supportive and everything. And kids just do so much better in the traditional family value families. But I grew up and did well in high school, went accepted. I got congressional nominations and everything to United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. I went for one semester. I got through the plebe summer and the hard part. I wanted to make sure I finished it all, but then you have 2 years to decide if you want to stay. And I was like, I don't want to do this. It just wasn't right. I knew it wasn't right for me to continue on doing that. So I did decide to leave, and I did play soccer for them, Division I, and then I continued with my last 3 years of Division I soccer at Cal State Northridge, which was closer to where I grew up.
Yeah, wow.
And from there, I went into the police academy at Orange County Sheriff's Academy and became a police officer for Newport Beach Police, and was a police officer for 15 years. And early in my police career, I realized that God really wired me to be entrepreneurial. And so my mind would just work that way. And my dad growing up, did you ever, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Did you ever?
Oh, yeah.
Most people
read
have.
the book.
So my dad growing up, I guess more fits the poor dad category of, working hard, but thinking on a dollar per hour type of basis. I also had my best friend in life, and his dad was very much an entrepreneur who immigrated to the United States the right way. And he eventually created a company. He started out fixing VCRs in his garage, and eventually sold a robotics company for $80 million.
What?
And I got to watch a lot of that happen. So I had the two kind of.
Yeah. You saw that.
My dad's my dad. Yeah. He still is a great dad. But it was interesting seeing my friend's dad and just a different way of looking at things. Very entrepreneurial and very amazing, hardworking man. And so I did I wanted to do these entrepreneurial things, but I had this government job, and the government really is not excited about entrepreneurial efforts, I found out. So as a young police officer, I knew I needed to if I was going to, use what God gave me, the gifts that God gave me, I was going to need to do it outside of police work. So I started a few companies on the side, and eventually the main company grew to having 25 full-time employees. And it was related
while you were a police officer?
While I was a police officer, still full time. And it was mainly related to luxury real estate marketing and a service for developers of super high-end real estate projects. And eventually, my wife, she's like, you should probably pick a career here.
Yeah.
So
the 80 to 100-hour work weeks.
Yeah. So we had 6 kids by then. And I left after about 12 years full time. I left and I continued as a reserve police officer for 3 more years. So total of about 15 years. And I loved it. I loved being a police officer, but I also loved being an entrepreneur and doing my own thing too. So I did leave and got fully into my companies and everything. Just a few years later, they all collapsed, and it's a long story we won't get into, but it's related to the fluctuation of the yen versus the dollar of all things. And I was left in this position where I'm like, okay, I've got 6 kids. I need to rebuild a company. And I was selling off assets to pay off business debt. And I got everybody paid off. And I'm just like, where am I going to rebuild this company? And I was just so fed up with California and the taxes and the regulations. And they just seem to hate business owners there. They're like, oh, wow, you started a business. You got through your first year. You're still here. Here's some more challenges for you, right? It's like they want you to fail almost. So, I was thinking, my kids were kind of coming up into this age where the oldest was going into high school. And I was just tired of the taxes, tired of having to pay my employees so much more money so they can afford their taxes, and tired of the leftism that was spreading through, that area of where we lived at that point in time. The threat of vaccine mandates coming through schools and everything else. This was all before 2020. And I was like, I want to do this life, and I want to raise my kids somewhere where it's just better. All those things are better. And after a lot of research and talking to friends who had retired and moved, and several of them came, had moved to Idaho, and I researched and I thought, man, that's the place I would love to be, I think, so then we came out and visited, and my wife and I, we really loved it. And she just said, but our families there, our churches there just don't really want to move. As we're driving, we flew back home, driving down the 405 freeway and bumper to bumper traffic. And so we agreed to pray about it. And about 3 or 4 months later, church we were at there decided to plant a church in the Boise area. So that was like, we had already gone there, and they said, if we would love for people to consider moving. So that was like the thing that, the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's how we found ourselves moving to Idaho. And this is 2018, beginning of 2018. And ever since then, I've been working hard in the real estate world. Sold a lot of houses and reinvested the money that I was making back into some businesses. And one of those businesses, an event center. And then I was looking for a bar to complement the event center business. Yeah. And I walked into a bar in Eagle, Idaho, where we live. And I said, hey, interested in selling by chance? And the owner said, yeah, you know what? I am interested in selling. So we kind of made a deal almost on the back of a napkin type of thing. And a month later, closed escrow and bought the building and the bar from that owner who had been there 13 years.
So was it called Old State Saloon before that?
No.
Did you rebrand and rename and everything?
No, it was called Gathering Place, which is a little coincidental because what I wanted, my vision for it was to be a gathering place for people, but I wanted to name it, I wanted it to be a nod to history. And the building was built in 1906. And I decided to name it after the street it was on, Old State Street in Eagle. So Old State Saloon.
Yeah, come on.
We decided, hey, this is going to be a place that's truly a gathering place. So there's not a bunch of screens with sports on and everything. I get people calling me about putting sports on all the time, and we just don't do it typically unless there's a local person who's actually involved in the whatever it is. But we wanted a place to be a gathering place where people would come and have real conversation. As you look back at the founding and history of our country and the taverns and the Marine Corps being founded in a tavern and recruitment starting in taverns, those are the places that people met and had good conversations. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to build. And, today our menu says, there's a letter in the beginning of the menu. And it says, hey, a lot of bars, or the way we live in our world, bars will say, leave your religion, politics at the door when you come in, check them at the door. And we say, no, bring them in and let's talk about it. Let's sit with real people and have real conversations, not just scream at each other from behind screens, Yeah.
Yeah. What's crazy is because, I started, it was called LYFE Public House up here. And my idea was to be a gathering place. And so we ended up, probably the only place at the time that could hold, 100 or, 150 people or whatever. So we ended up being a place where, like a lot of political rallies, a lot of political speeches, but we had dances and concerts, and that was the whole deal. But unfortunately, the land was acquired.
I remember reading about it, and I commented about it a few times online, and I was like, nah, that's very similar to Old State Saloon, except up there in Coeur d'Alene,
Yeah, it was, but the thing that I loved the most, and I don't necessarily know that I, did well with the business side of it, but man, it was a great gathering spot. And I think there's something so important about just having a place where people could come and talk and they could disagree. And, at the end of the day, still be friends. I remember, I think the last time we had a sheriff's election, well, I had both guys speak, and obviously I'm not going to vote for both guys, but I was like, man, if you're running for sheriff of our county, man, you want to speak? Come on and speak. Yeah. I think I had in the last governor race, we had, a couple of different speakers there. And people are like, well, what do you think about this person? I'm like, dude, they asked me if they could come and speak. I'm a public house, man. I'm open arms, man. I don't have to agree with everything somebody says when they come to my place. So,
agreed. We have presentations at Old State, and we'll book them and people will come in, and basically, they have to be willing to answer questions at the end is kind of like the main point. And that means that people will be there to hold somebody accountable or to challenge what they're saying in a respectful way. And I think it's like a lost art to be able to do that in a public place that we lost because of entertainment and the media and this push towards bread and circuses, right? And just keeping people distracted by things that don't matter. So you go like now people just go in a public place and it's like they're going there with friends, but they're not going there to have a deep conversation. They're going there to watch these glowing screens on the walls. And that's not, we need to get back to the way that our country was founded, real place, real people, real conversations. So I feel those are the times. It's not easy. It's not doing that. I know you know that.
Yeah.
It's not
And
easy.
you know that as well.
But it's the times that I look across the room and I can see it happening.
Yep.
And that's the most rewarding for
Absolutely.
me, you know. And I'm way past in my life my goals being about money. It's not about money. It's about looking across the room, seeing two people engaging in conversation, becoming friends, maybe disagreeing, but learning about each other.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most rewarding thing about having Old State.
Yeah, totally. I remember I'd have speakers come in and, like people would, like they might be controversial or something like that. I remember I had Lee Dundas is an attorney that fought for medical rights, medical freedom in California.
Mm.
And so she came and spoke and at my spot. And I mean, the hate mail that I got, I was called, whatever, racist, misogynist, fascist, just all this stuff. And I'm like, and I experienced it like that much. Talk to me about heterosexual awareness.
Yeah.
I experienced this much. You had to experience like way more than that.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
Okay, so it's heterosexual awesomeness, right? Yeah.
That's what did I say?
Awareness. But that's
Gosh, I didn't say
That's
that, but I know it's awesome.
yes. And that's kind of like the awesomeness part is the part that really I think riled people up.
Yes. Yes.
It's awesome. I mean, heterosexuality is awesome. And
Yes.
so the idea to celebrate that, was May of 24. We're going into June. June's Pride Month. And instead of like doing the thing that we do, which is kind of just try to avoid, going downtown or trying to avoid the celebrations and things and not play a part of that. Instead of doing that, I was just said, what could we do that would be something we can celebrate in June that would be honoring to God? And I thought a bit about it and God's design for sexuality. And I thought, wow, that's really awesome. It's an amazing gift to us that God gives us. So let's just like celebrate. I mean, let's just call it heterosexual awesomeness, right? And so
This is awesome.
We'll just do a whole month about it. And we did. And the world kind of went wild, on both sides of the equation there. And we received a lot of hate and some coverage early on where essentially the Idaho statesman was calling me bigoted and all these things on more of an opinion piece. And I got an overwhelming amount of support, behind it and said, we're so thankful you're standing up for what's right and true. And people were just at this point, and kind of like the little mantra was enough is enough. Everybody's just like, hey, enough is enough. Like with all of this pushing us and trying to make us celebrate these things. And, for me, originally, my intent was just to celebrate, heterosexual awesomeness. And it wasn't meant to be like a month where we're going to try to put down somebody else or spend time, saying LGBTQ is wrong or whatever. It was just about focusing on something else. But it was so vicious, the attacks. And I'm talking from around the world, basically.
Oh, I'm sure.
And people were sending in hundreds, sometimes thousands of messages a day. And they were threats and there were just gross, the most disgusting messages. You have people leaving. I think the most reviewed bar on Facebook for a period of time with fake reviews from around the world, right? And people would they would do a review and they would in the review say, oh, I was in there and I saw the owner in the bathroom, and they would describe these horrible, grotesque sexual things I was doing in the bathroom. And it's just like, these people are just using, I guess they're just being really creative and coming up with these just totally disgusting things. They would send me gay porn messages. They knew I was Christian, so they would include Jesus in this gay porn stuff that they would send me. It's just like just beyond disgusting things. And so it really got my attention because I wasn't aware of the depths of spiritual evil, I guess you could say, involved with it. And so I started like looking into it more for the first time in my life, actually paying attention to the agenda. And it really is like, you just can't get more evil than part of this. And the part that I'm talking about is the whole agenda behind the children and going after the children and targeting the children and deceiving the children with these lies to ultimately get them to believe a boy may not be a boy and a girl may not be a
Right.
girl, and that they should consider doing something with drugs first and then potentially the scalpel and get surgery where you're cutting off body parts, and basically forever changing that child, soon to be an adult's life for the rest of their life,
Right.
making them a patient, a very expensive patient of big pharma from that point on. Researching it a little bit, massive amounts of money behind that whole thing.
Yep.
Massive, all through the NGO programs in school. I mean, it's crazy. And so I started, it shifted beyond that month. It went that month and everything. And then things kind of shifted where I, regularly took a step forward to talk out against that. And I had people like Chloe Cole come out who detransitioned and tell her story. And I had a few people like that who basically, as a child, they went through this whole grooming situation, were deceived to think that they might be the opposite gender, went through that, and then later figured out this was a massive deception. I want to get back to who God designed me to be.
Right.
And so we had them come out and tell their story. And this was about, 2 years of this process of just continuously stepping forward in the middle of people just hating that I'm doing it. They're hating that I'm putting a spotlight on that. They hate, Chloe for what she's doing, but we continued to do it. So there was a lot of time during there where I was thinking to myself, man, why am I doing all of this? Because sometimes it gets really dark and you're just just people constantly trying to tear my business down. There's things going on behind the scenes with my business. I can tell there's some government problems and there's people who are just trying to make me fail every which way I'm looking. And I'm like, man, why am I doing all this? And it wasn't, really clear to me until if we fast forward a little bit and we go to just November, a few months ago. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, as we're going into the midterms and the world seems to be falling apart, people are flipping out over immigration and how many people have come in this country illegally. And people are flipping out over the Epstein list. And people are learning that there is just a massive amount of corruption in our government. And all this is happening. And you have protests happening on the other side and a lot of people just battling now or being positioned to battle against each other. And I'm thinking to myself, man, there's just so much control happening by the uniparty and by these people in these government positions. And I'm looking at Idaho, and it's been evident to me that the governor's office has been very much a establishment / uniparty type of office, and somebody who does not communicate with the people very well at all. And I was like, man, nobody is running against him. And here I am at all these interviews and things I'm doing, and I'm pleading with people, who love America across the country, step forward. If we all step forward and do something, this can end. We'll expose this evil, glorifying God in those decisions of exposing evil. And I'm looking at, and this is the reason I started thinking about it, because nobody was running against our current governor, and nobody that apparently would have a chance. And like all of this, like people who built up in support of me, of stepping out, for the things I stepped out with immigration and with heterosexual awesomeness. And I'm looking back at the 2 years and I'm like, man, what if this is the reason why I went through all that? What if these 2 years were there to prepare me and my family for running for governor? You have this governor who's, all the government experience and is, kind of like, conditioned to go into this spot, and it's like handed off to the next person. And that's kind of the way they like to do it. The establishment, they tap the next person on the shoulder and hand it off to them. And I am not that guy. I am a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm a business owner. I'm a regular guy. But I think that's what the founding fathers intended for it to
Totally.
be. So I'm like now looking at my life and I'm like, man, I think my whole life has prepared me for this moment. I didn't even know. It's not like I was a boy thinking, oh, I really want to be governor someday. I never, ever said that in my life. I don't, I do now. I do now want to be governor, but like 3 months ago, I didn't. I had no desire in the world to be governor. But I want to be governor because I want what's right for the people. And, there's some things that I really love about how Trump governs. And it's the way that he communicates directly to the people of our country,
Yeah.
the best way that he can. And the guy's blunt, and he's transparent, pretty transparent and blunt. And tells it like it is often, and calling people out by name, exposing corruption, exposing evil, exposing darkness. There's plenty of things that I'm questioning about, President Trump and whatever. And there's a lot I don't know that he knows. And so it's hard to,
Right.
Monday morning quarterback him all the time. But for for a lot of things, there's a lot of things I like the way he does things. And what I want to do, when I'm elected, it's going to be like mind blowing. People are going to be like, our governor's allowed to do that? Because I'm going to be so much in front of the people. It's going to be so opposite of what Idaho's used to, which is a governor who ignores the people. And I can say that because all these things were happening and people getting concerned, and then daycares. And I went out and I filmed myself going and knocking on doors of daycares and finding out that there's fraud going on through our health and welfare department in Idaho. And it's rampant. It is rampant. And I got enough information to realize all these major problems are happening. And I brought a letter to the governor's office and I gave it to him, or I gave it to him through his secretary, lady at the front. I said, the people are inviting the governor to meet with us. And I'll have cameras and people in Idaho can watch, and we can write questions in, and we just need questions about the fraud and corruption and NGOs. And there's a lot of people very concerned about Idaho Power spraying chemicals over us in the skies, which is not a conspiracy theory. It's actually on their website. In case you don't know, it's scheduled on their website that they do this. And so dropping that off, and she said, oh, okay, yeah, he's aware, because I had already sent the letter in via email. He said, oh, he's aware. We'll answer you or whatever. And then it's got ignored. And that's the very, very unfortunate thing about the type of leadership that we've been having. It doesn't involve the people, and the people need to step forward and be involved. And so what that looks like is being a good steward of the government that we've been given, right? We've been given a great form of government in our country and in Idaho. When you read through the Constitution, it's great. But if you just go and show up and vote, and then you take off and you don't do another thing, you're not doing your part to hold the representatives accountable, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I want to be a governor that's like, hey, let's do this together. Let's hold the entire legislature accountable. Let's expose evil where it is. But I want you guys involved. I'm going to give you as much information as I can give. And the more people we get following this, the people are the power, right? So it's called populism. It's called being a populist governor. I want to work with the people, and I'm going to do it in a way that's going to raise eyebrows. It's going to be like, wow, I can't believe he's like here with us in the crowd, and talking with us and doing these
Kind of
things.
like how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's kind of, you read history books, that's kind of how it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I went blabbing along.
Like I was like, dude, I completely forgot about I was doing a podcast. I was like listening to what you're saying, man. That was all great stuff, man.
Yeah. And so lately I've been doing a lot of interviews and talking with people, and they cover a lot of the same stuff. So I'm trying to bring something to each interview that's new material in case people are watching that watched another one that was similar, because we do often cover like the reason why you're running and things like that.
Yeah.
And, but I have a story that I'll tell from being a police officer, and I haven't told the story before in any interview, but I'm trying to bring something.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
But it's a story that stands out to me, and it's pretty simple. I mean, I think it'll tell you a little bit about who I am. But there's this one time I did a car stop, and it was at night, and this guy was in his car by himself. And I walked up, talked to him, and when you get experience as a police officer, there's times you just know that they have something illegal in the car. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you have anything illegal in the car with you? No, nothing illegal. Okay, come on out. Let's just chat on the sidewalk. So I was chatting with him on the sidewalk, and I said, do you mind if I look through your car? And I mean, he can say no, right? But I'm just asking, do you mind if I look through your car? And I think I got a little bit of his history and had some further reasoning to think that he might have something in his car. Another officer arrived, and the officer stood there, and I asked him about it, and he said, I have no idea whose that is, or why it's in the car. Somebody must have thrown it under the seat that we went out last weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I did a few other things and some stuff, and was thinking about a few things. I hadn't arrested him yet, and I'm still just kind of talking to him. We had this conversation, and I said, hey, look, I'm going to ask you another question. And I think, this question is going to be a moment you look back on. So I would appreciate if you would just kind of pay attention to me for 1 minute. But I couldn't help but notice that you have a cross around your neck, um, to this gentleman who's sitting on the curb at this point. And I said, you know, is this something that means something to you? And he told me that he believes in Jesus and that he's Christian. And I said, well, I have a very strong feeling about what's going on in your life. And I told you, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. But before I do, I want you to know that this is your moment that you will continue on lying in your life and go down a path of lies, and you will continue being a slave to drugs, many other sins, or you're going to come clean and you're going to take responsibility for the bad decisions you've made in your life. And this is going to be the moment that you turn away from darkness and you go towards the
Wow.
Lord for the rest of your life. I said, I'm a Christian man. I love the Lord. And I pray that you make that decision today to reject your life of sin and move forward for the rest of your life,
Just right down the street.
doing what the Lord would have you do. You're wearing a cross around your neck. What would Jesus Christ have you do right now? And I'm going to ask you the question one more time. There will be no other opportunity after this. So you can reject truth right now, or you can do what's right and change your life forever. Whose cocaine is that? He said, it's mine. And so he told me the whole story about where, he got it and all this stuff. And I put it all in the report, and I arrested him for possession of cocaine. It's a felony charge. First conviction in California is basically a slap on the wrist. He goes off. And a lot of times when you're a police officer, you never really hear what happens in someone's life afterwards. Well, I'm telling you, like a year and a half later, I'm on a car stop, and this car pulls over ahead of me, and this guy comes running down the sidewalk. And I was first like, what the heck is going on here, right?
Yeah.
It's just random guys running at me.
Yeah.
And he's like, officer. And he's like, you're the one who arrested me on this location and everything I had cocaine in the car. And he told me, he's like, I want you to know you're right. I've turned away from drugs, and I've turned away from the life that I was living. And I saw you, and I wanted to come thank you.
That's so cool, dude.
And that story is a meaningful story for me.
Yes.
Because it's like, we had that bond of Christ, and he was living in sin, and I called him out on it, and he felt convicted probably by the Holy Spirit at that point in time. And he said, he decided to do that he didn't want that life anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And these are the times when you get to be like, wow, I was able to deliver that and be a voice, biblical, a godly voice in this person's life at the right time. And it made that that big of a difference for him.
Find appointment, man.
And so I know for people, I guess the point is that that's meaningful to me,
Yeah.
repentance, truth. I've gotten to the point in life where I just don't care about the damage that truth causes,
Yeah.
and, and there's damage with that truth that guy told on the curb. There's damage for him initially. Well, he went to jail, and he got charged and everything. He probably would have gone anyways, but he got charged, and he was embarrassed in front of family and friends and all the stuff that happened. But knowing that he was so excited a year and a half later that he was no longer a slave to that sin, to the drugs and the sin in his life, the truth caused damage. And then he rebuilt a life based on truth, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think where we're at as a country right now, and where we're at as Idaho right now, is that we need to expose all the deception, expose all the evil, and put people in a position where they don't have a choice other than to say the truth. Damage comes out, and then we rebuild on a foundation of truth, just like what happened with that car stop and that gentleman.
Yeah. It seems like there's a famous book somewhere that talks about truth setting us free.
Yes. It said, if you do follow me and you live a life proclaiming truth, the world's going to hate you.
Yeah.
They're going to hate
Yep.
you, and you're going to see a lot of damage, because that's what the truth does. It causes damage, what appears to be damage, but it's only through that damage that we can rebuild something that's super powerful and righteous and true. And I'm just so thankful to be at a point in my life where I wake up every day and I just want truth. I just want truth. I say, what would you have me do today, Lord? And I just do it, and that's all I want to do, genuinely, from on the bottom of my heart, that's what I want to accomplish in life, is
Yeah.
just doing what the Lord wants. So that's more of like the personal Christian Mark. So if you have statesman questions, I can answer statesman questions too. But I think that each time I'm trying to do an interview and tell a story where people can
Yeah.
understand me a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And, I want to be, super, I mean, you've been so generous with your time but I want to be respectful because I know you're doing a lot of things. So it was, a pleasure getting to hear about you and, getting to, like I said, the first time I'd ever even heard of you was Heterosexual Awesomeness. And I was like, what's going on? Because I could, on a teeny level, relate, because of the hate mail that I got for silly things. And then, we have a mutual friend and she was like, oh, Mark's going to be up here. You should reach out to him and see if I'll come on the podcast. So
Absolutely.
man, that's so cool, man.
And I will be on podcasts too of people that probably don't like me. I'm probably going to accept almost every offer that I can accept. And there'll be people that I'll be on their podcast, and there might be people who are like, why'd you go on that person's podcast? They represent this or whatever. And I don't look at it like that. I don't look at it just because I'm sitting next to somebody. It doesn't mean that I agree but sometimes people say, well, that's like, you shouldn't associate yourself with such and such a name or whatever. And I would say, like, would you go on Joe Rogan's podcast? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, haven't you heard all the things that he says that are not with the way you believe, And so it's, and if Joe Rogan, I'll be happy to go on your podcast and do that. But yeah, I'm willing to go on, any podcast, whether I agree or not. I've been on some podcasts that have been some big podcasts where I totally disagree. But I think that's important, is to learn maturely learn how to discuss the things we disagree in life, learn from each other and move on.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we can disagree with someone, but still treat them lovingly and respectfully and, as a person that God created. And it's okay. Just because we're together doesn't mean that we agree on everything. And chances are people that I think I agree with, I probably have if I talk to them long enough, I'm going to find things that I disagree with them on.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've kind of lost that art where, we can say, I totally cool dude. We completely disagree on certain issues, but man, we'll go, have a beverage together, go golfing together or whatever. It's all cool, man.
Yeah. Another example, LDS church. And I disagree with the religion, a lot of the religion part and those decisions, but it's okay. Like, we still have a lot of things that we do agree majorly, family values and things that we can fight for that will give us a great future for our children in Idaho and make it a better place to live. And I think that's totally fine. It's like it's not a purity test, as my friend Lauren says, but it's like, it doesn't have to be perfectly pure that you agree with everything. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey man, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And man, if you are watching this, send this out to people, like, share, all that kind of stuff. You all kind of know what to do. But thanks for joining us. And I will see you next Wednesday on the LYFE Podcast. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.